Okay, so this is segment 3 of our training on race, culture, and ethics in social work. In segment 1, we talked about culture and the differing factors of culture and what culture looks like and how someone determines their culture. We talked in segment 2 about race and racial identity and how one differentiates race, and also some of the racial issues that our adoptive families and our adopted kiddos will go through and come to face with in their life. In this third segment, we're going to take some time to talk about how one discusses issues of race and culture in an ethical and appropriate manner. So, many people have anxiety about talking race, culture, and ethnicity, and a lot of times the majority of this anxiety comes from a point of not wanting to offend. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we don't want to offend people. But we need to be cautious, and that in our fear of offending, it's not keeping us from having these beneficial conversations, these conversations that can lead to great relationships. And so we need to be open to having these discussions. And so couple of key pointers here are: you need to know who you can have these discussions with. People that you trust, people that trust you, people where there's already a relationship established, where you know that they're a safe person to talk to about issues of race. I have a couple good African American friends, and I know if I have questions at all, I can always go to them and we can talk about the issues, and they'll give me their points of views, and I'll give them my points of views, and it'll be a safe and productive and wonderful conversation, because we're people that mutually respect one another, and that respect and that relationship's already established. It's also good to know what your safe opportunities are, where are safe places to talk about things, because not every opportunity is a good opportunity to ask questions in. If I'm attending a Guatemalan funeral, I'm not going to sit there and ask questions during the funeral because it's not appropriate. But knowing where are the situations and the opportunities that are safe to ask questions in, and when should you ask particular questions. A conversation can go a long way depending on how you start it. One of my favorite ways to start a conversation on race or culture or whatever it might be is by apologizing for my own ignorance. If I go up to one of my friends and I have a couple of questions for her about an issue of race or culture, I'm going to start out the conversation by saying, you know what, I am super sorry that I am ignorant on the subject and that I don't know the answer to this question, but can I ask you blah, 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 and go on with my question. And the fact that I have come at it from that standpoint and apologizing for my ignorance, it just starts the conversation out on a positive note, on a good note. So a lot of times you can go a long way just by how you start out a conversation. We have we have a very large Congolese population in the church that I attend. We have a Congolese service on Saturday evenings, and so my husband and I have taken time to establish some really great relationships with some of the Congolese people in our church, and those relationships have really exploded, and it just provides good conversation about their culture and their beliefs, and why they do certain things that they do. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a Congolese lady who we were talking about babies, of course, because I was holding my baby, and she wanted to know when it was time to pop out the next one, and I mentioned that we might be done. We might be done with 2 kids, and she was just flabbergasted that I could maybe only think of having 2 children, and we were able to talk about the Congolese culture, and how in the Congolese culture many of the families are large because they enjoy having these large families, and children are seen as such a blessing over there, and a sign of a woman's fertility and her success as a mother, and as a woman is in the number of children that she can have, and that's just part of the Congolese culture. And so we're able to have a really positive conversation about that, but we're able to keep it lighthearted too, and not get too heavy with it. So finding those opportunities is important. My husband and I have been watching this new show, This Is Us, on TV. And there's a couple back in the 1970s that adopted an African American child, and it's an interesting show because they're exploring race and an interracial family in a time where it wasn't the most popular, in a time where we didn't see it as frequently as we see it nowadays. And so the show is really exploring some of the issues that come up when you're raising in the 1970s a child that's black, and it's funny because they've already talked about the hair issue and how mom doesn't know how to do the hair, and so an African American woman corrected her on, you need to find that boy a barber that knows how to do black hair because you're not doing it right. So, but yeah, just watching that show is bringing up, issues that can be discussed of race and culture and what that looks like and how it's changed in the last several decades even. A couple of ground rules for discussing race, culture, and ethnicity. An important ground rule is not to have labels. It's important for you to know you don't use terms that you're not comfortable with. You don't use terms that you don't know what they really mean. If you don't know if a term is derogatory or not, then don't use it. That's just a good ground rule to have. Another ground rule is speak from your personal experiences. It personalizes the situation, it personalizes a question when you're speaking from a personal experience. It helps the person understand why you're asking the question that you're asking, and that it's not just nosiness or curiosity, but you have a genuine desire to understand. Another ground rule is to take responsibility for your words and actions and to learn from them. If you've offended somebody somehow, you should immediately apologize, and then you should take that as a learning experience to not repeat again. Another ground rule is confidentiality, and we learn this with our kids, and we talk all the time about how important it is to respect your child's story and the fact that that's your child's story, and they might not want it being told to everybody. So confidentiality is huge when you're discussing issues of race and culture. Somebody might be comfortable sharing with you a story of their race or culture that might be very personal to them, and they might not have any intention of you sharing that with other people. And so keeping in mind those topics of confidentiality are very important. The last ground rule is to be respectful of differences. And this is kind of the most apropos example that I have for where we're at right now in our country. Maybe I come from a Republican culture and you come from a Democratic culture. If we're engaging in discussion on our differing cultures and beliefs, our differing political affiliations, we must be very respectful of one another's differences. It doesn't mean we have to agree with the other person. We might strongly disagree with the other person, but that doesn't give us a right to be disrespectful of the individual. And we're seeing this a lot right now in our country. It's that with this election coming up, politics is a heated debate. And so we see a lot of disrespect of the other parties when we're talking about the candidates, when we're talking about the issues at hand. And so it's important to remember to be respectful of one another and one another's differing beliefs, differing value systems, differing politics, differing issues that they're struggling with in life and that they're going through, and understanding that everybody comes from a different place. And the great thing about America is that we're all entitled to our own beliefs, our own religion, our own values, and it's important for us to be respectful of one another in that. So those are the ground rules. Don't use labels. Speak from your personal experiences. Take responsibility for your words if you offend somebody. Be confidential, respect confidentiality, and be respectful of differences when you're having these conversations.